Some nights don't start out feeling like anything important. The sky doesn't warn you. The air doesn't shift. You're just living your regular life. And then the phone rings and everything changes. That's how it started for me. My name is Dora Reyes. I'm 41 years old. I ride a 2019 Harley-Davidson Road King Midnight Black Chrome Pipes. I founded a club called the Iron Magnolias 11 years ago, out of a parking lot in East Beaumont, Texas, with 6 women who were tired of being invisible. Today we have 43 members across 3 chapters. We are not a gang. We are not a spectacle. We are a family that chose each other. And when one of us calls, everyone answers. That night, the one who called was Carmen. Carmen Vega had been a member of our club for 4 years. She was quiet, careful, the kind of woman who measured her words before she spent them. She was also a mother, the best kind, the kind who sacrificed silently and loved loudly. Her daughter Marisol was 6 years old, with big brown eyes and a habit of collecting smooth river rocks. She carried them in her coat pockets and called them her quiet friends. When my phone buzzed at 9:47 on a Wednesday night, I was sitting at my kitchen table going over route plans for our fall charity ride. I saw Carmen's name and answered on the second ring. The first thing I heard was not Carmen's voice. It was a little girl crying. Then Carmen, low and tight. "Dora, he's outside." I set down my pen. "Who is outside, Carmen?" "Garrett." A beat of silence. "He says he's taking Marisol. He says the paperwork gives him the right." "But Dora, the paperwork doesn't give him that. Not tonight. Not like this." I stood up from the table. "How long has he been there?" 20 minutes. He's been knocking, then banging. I called the police twice. They said it's a civil matter. They said unless he physically breaks in, there's nothing they can do tonight. I already had my jacket off the hook. "Is your door locked?" "Yes." "Windows?" "Yes." "Where is Marisol right now?" "She's right here. She's holding onto my leg." Carmen's voice cracked on the last word, just slightly, the way a strong woman's voice cracks when she is trying very hard not to let her child see her fall apart. "Carmen, listen to me. Don't open the door. Don't argue with him through the door. Don't give him anything to use. I'm coming, and I'm not coming alone." I hung up, and I made 3 calls in 4 minutes. The first was to my vice president, Rhonda Castillo. 6 feet tall, 15 years on a bike, and the most unshakable human being I have ever known. The second was to our road captain, Bev Torres, who had the phone tree and could move the membership like a current through wire. The third call I made was to a family law attorney named Patricia Hughes, who was also a member of our chapter, and who picked up on the first ring. By the time I put on my helmet, I had confirmation from 19 riders. Now, let me tell you about Garrett Holt, because he matters. He is not a cartoon villain. He is something more dangerous, a man who believes absolutely in his own righteousness. Garrett was 38, good-looking in the way a blade is good-looking, the kind of man who smiled warmly in public and calculated everything in private. He and Carmen had been together 3 years. They had never married. When they separated 14 months ago, the split had been Carmen's decision, and Garrett had never once accepted it. He was not a violent man in the way most people picture violence. He didn't throw things. He didn't leave bruises you could photograph. What he did was smaller and more surgical. He disappeared Marisol's school pickup paperwork. He disputed child support in court for 8 months to bleed Carmen's savings. He filed motions to change custody and then withdrew them at the last minute, just to keep Carmen trapped in the legal machine, anxious, exhausted, always looking over her shoulder. He had filed for emergency custody 3 weeks earlier, claiming Carmen was unstable. The court had denied it, but Garrett was not the kind of man who accepted the word no. He had come to that house that night not because the law told him he could. He had come because he wanted Carmen to know he still had the power to make her afraid. I know this because Carmen had told me, and I believed her, because I had looked into his eyes once, at a school event, and seen exactly what she described. A man watching the world for weakness, the way a hawk watches a field. The drive to Carmen's house was 22 minutes. I know because I counted. Carmen's neighborhood was a quiet residential street. Small yards, old oak trees, porch lights on. As I turned off the main road and came down her block, I could see his truck first. A big silver Ram, parked half on the curb, engine still running, headlights on, cutting across the front of Carmen's yard like a spotlight. He was standing on the front porch. I could see him in silhouette, arms crossed, jacket. That posture that said he owned everything in his sightline. I pulled up across the street and cut my engine. Then I waited, because I had not come alone. On by one, and then in pairs, they came. Headlights turning onto the block, the low rumble of engines filling the quiet of that neighborhood. Bikes parking along both sides of the street, with a patience and a precision that was almost ceremonial. Women in leather, women in denim, women who had ridden 50 miles on a Wednesday night without asking why, only asking where. They didn't rev their engines. They didn't shout. They parked their bikes. They stood beside them, and they waited. Garrett heard it. He turned around, and I watched him count 19 motorcycles, 22 women, because a few had carpooled, lined up in the dark on both sides of the street, outside the home of a woman he had come to intimidate. I walked across the street alone. He watched me come. He knew who I was. Carmen had mentioned me. And men like Garrett always researched the people in the lives they were trying to control. He stood his ground on that porch. But I saw something flicker in his face. Something recalculate. I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps and looked up at him, not with anger. Anger is a gift to men like Garrett. Anger tells them they got to you. I looked at him the way you look at a structural problem, with assessment. It's a little late to be making house calls, I said. He squared his shoulders. This doesn't involve you. This is a private family matter. I'm aware. Carmen is family. That's why I'm here. He gestured behind me, at the street. What is this supposed to be? Some kind of threat? No, I said. It's a Wednesday night, and my friends needed somewhere to park their bikes. He came down one step. I didn't move. You think this impresses me? His voice had an edge now. Not quite anger, but the thing underneath anger. The thing that sounds like control, but is actually the first sign of its absence. I have legal rights to my daughter. I have paperwork. If you think you can park a bunch of motorcycles out here and make a legal matter go away, you are deeply mistaken. Patricia, I said, without turning around, and Patricia Hughes walked up beside me, helmet under her arm, reading glasses on top of her head, a manila folder in her hand. She handed me a document. I held it out toward Garrett, without stepping up the porch stairs. This is Carmen's most recent custody order, I said, signed 16 days ago by Judge Marlene Thibodeau. It specifies that your scheduled custody time begins Friday at 6 p.m., not Wednesday, not tonight. Tonight, you have no legal right to be on this property. You have no legal right to demand entry, and Patricia, who is a licensed family law attorney, has already photographed your truck, your presence, and the timestamp. If you do not leave in the next few minutes, Carmen will file a motion for contempt of court by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. The door behind Garrett opened. Carmen stood in the doorway. She was wearing a gray sweater, and her hair was pulled back, and her face was completely composed. The way a person's face looks when they have run out of fear and reached something harder on the other side of it. Beside her, half hidden behind her leg, was Marisol. Garrett looked at Carmen. Something in his face shifted, not softening, but stripping down, the performance of reasonableness peeling away. You called these people on me, he said. His voice was quieter now. That was worse. Quiet men are more dangerous than loud ones. You called a circus to my daughter's home. Carmen's voice was steady. I called friends. You think this helps, Marisol? Seeing this? He spread his arms. I will be in court with this. I will document every single thing here tonight. I will show the judge a mob outside my child's house. No, I said it without raising my voice. Just the word, placed in the air like a stone. He stopped. I want to tell you something, and I want you to actually hear it, I said. What a judge is going to see, if this gets documented, is a mother who was afraid. Afraid enough to call 22 people at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night. And a man who showed up on a night that was not his scheduled night, after a court had denied his emergency custody motion. After 8 months of financial litigation designed to exhaust a single mother. What a judge is going to see is the picture you painted, not the one you intended. So I want you to think carefully about what kind of documentation benefits you tonight. He stared at me for a long time. I let him. Then he looked past me at the street, at the women standing beside their bikes in the dark. Not threatening, not moving, just there, present the way mountains are present, unmovable, witnessing. And I saw it, the thing I had been waiting for, the specific moment when a man who has built his power entirely on the premise that no one will show up realizes that he was wrong, that someone did show up, that many someones showed up, that the world Carmen lived in was not the isolated, frightened, solo world he had been carefully constructing around her for over a year. He came down the last step and walked past me without a word. He got in his truck. He sat there for a moment. I could see the dome light in the cab, and then the engine revved higher, and the headlights swung away, and the silver Ram drove to the end of the block and turned and was gone. For a moment, nobody moved. Then, from the porch, there was a small sound. I turned, and Marisol had come out from behind her mother's leg. She was standing at the edge of the porch in her pajamas and her socks, clutching one of her smooth river rocks in both hands. She was looking not at the street where Garrett's truck had disappeared. She was looking at me, and she walked down the porch steps, slowly, because she was 6 and the steps were a little high. And she crossed the few feet of yard between us, and she held up the rock. It was small and gray and oval, worn absolutely smooth. This one is my best one, she said. You can have it. I crouched down in front of her. I took the rock in both hands. Are you sure? I asked. Your best one? She nodded very seriously. Because you came. I held that rock, and I felt something move through my chest that I cannot name precisely, but that lives in the same neighborhood as grief and gratitude, and the particular ache of having chosen the right thing. I held it together. Barely. Carmen came down the steps and put her hand on Marisol's shoulder. Her eyes met mine, above her daughter's head, and she didn't say anything. Didn't need to, but her lips pressed together, and she breathed in the long, shuddering way that people breathe when they have been holding themselves rigid for hours and have finally been given permission to let go. I stood up, and I held the rock against my palm, and I looked out at the street. Rhonda was leaning against her bike, watching me with that quiet smile she has. The one that means everything is fine. Bev was talking quietly with two of the others. Some of the women were starting engines, buttoning jackets, getting ready to ride back to wherever they had come from, to their homes, their families, their Wednesday nights. 22 people who had answered a phone call without knowing the full story, because they trusted the person making the call, and because that is what it means to belong to something but the truest strength I have ever seen. 1,000, but the truest strength I've ever seen is quieter than that. It looks like headlights turning onto a street. It looks like women standing beside their bikes in the dark, doing nothing but being present. It looks like a child handing you her best rock because you came. Patricia filed the contempt motion the next morning, not as a weapon, as a boundary. A legal line drawn in permanent ink that said, "This is where your reach ends." Garrett's attorney called Carmen's attorney before noon that same day. The agreed modification to the custody schedule was signed 4 weeks later. It included a provision for a third-party supervisor during exchanges. Carmen never had another surprise visit. Marisol still collects smooth rocks. She has 47 of them now. She named the one she gave me the night I met her. She told me its name when I saw her at Christmas, 3 months later. She had apparently been deciding what to call it since she handed it to me. She said, "I named it Dora because it's strong and it fits in your hand just right." I still carry it. Every ride. That night taught me something I already knew, but needed to be reminded of. That chosen family is not a lesser version of the family you were born into. It is not a consolation prize. It is a different kind of sacred, built not from blood and obligation, but from decision, from showing up again and again when it would be easier not to, from answering the phone at 9:47 on a Wednesday night and not asking why, only asking where. We are the Iron Magnolias. We do not carry weapons. We do not threaten. We do not escalate. We show up. And sometimes, in this world, that is the most powerful thing there is.